Giuseppe, YouTube's about up.
Jake is starting YouTube right now, Giuseppe. Okay, YouTube is up, according to Jake. So it is up. Now they just have to adjust John, and I think we're good.
4th, 2025 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Just for the record, Councilor Sweeney and Quinnell are excused, and Councilor Caltabiano is attending remotely. Apologies for the IT issues. We're going to start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Alberto, would you lead us tonight? Thank you very much. We'll move on to communications from the public. We do have one public hearing advertised for this evening. If you are here to speak on ordinance 25-8, please hold your comments until we call that public hearing. Otherwise, anything you'd like to bring to the attention of the council, your name and address for the record when you approach the podium, please.
Hello, Z 418 East 2nd Street.
Alex, be aware I cannot hear anything.
Yeah, I will let them know.
I didn't hear
Thank
that.
you.
But is that good?
Can you hear now, Giuseppe?
Oh,
Hello,
1 second,
Z
Z, sorry.
418 2nd Street.
Alex, be aware I cannot hear anything.
I will let them know.
Thank you.
Good. Can you hear Giuseppe? No.
Dave, is tonight's ordinance time sensitive? It's the one item we won't be able to address if we can't figure out the IT issues. Thank you.
No, I cannot hear, and I wouldn't want to miss the public comments.
you can just continue talking on Facebook, Gmail. It's okay. Another musical interlude like last meeting, perhaps? What's that?
Giuseppe, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you now. It sounds like the Verizon commercial.
Thanks for your patience.
You still can't hear us,
Need to
Giuseppe?
repeat, but we got
No.
it. Okay.
We got it. We have two-way communication. Now we can let Lady Z comment.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. First, I just want to say that I see the chief isn't here, but that's fine because this comment is just as easily given to the deputy chief. So I wanted to start just with a positive comment. I participated in a march and rally on Saturday in the rain, and I wanted to say thank you to the police department for providing traffic control and just a sense of safety. I'm not an organizer with the group. I just am a participant, and as someone who participates in many of these, and the experiences are not always positive, safe. This was, so thank you for that. That was just an agreement among all of us that we were really, really pleased to see the visibility and then also just the the ease of how the event unfolded. So thank you. Now, along those lines, I wanted to just follow up briefly on my comments and then comments that came from city attorney and perhaps the chief after in regards to what I had said. And I just want to clarify that I'm not casting any type of aspersions because I don't know. I'm not in people's heads. I can't call a police officer racist. I can't say they have that's the motivation for doing things. So the incident that happened most recently that I had commented on, I never called into question whether that was a lawful stop. Speeding, I totally get it. My question, and which I still have to this point, is just situationally. You know, so you stop the person, that's illegal, speeding, ask for the ID, the driver was unable or produced invalid, whatever it was. But my concern comes because I know you have a choice at that point in time as an officer. And to me, it's like the choices that are being made, while under policy and lawful, they're not, like if you want to put out the message that this is a welcoming community and that, you know, no one has a reason to fear the police, you have an option in a situation like that. So what happened was there were passengers, or at least a particular passenger, who at that point was asked for ID. And I get that. I guess the thinking is that they wanted somebody who was legal to be able to drive the car away, but you don't have to do that. I mean, that's a choice, but you could also just at that point in time, because you know at that point in time, you can tell by their skin color, you can tell, you don't have to ask passengers for ID, you can just ticket the driver and have everybody exit the vehicle and just as loud as I am. It's not, okay. Okay, oh, it died. Died. What died never stays dead. Better? I don't know. Anyway, I'll continue. So my concern is that it's the appearance that there are racist police officers. And let's do something about that. Let's figure out a way to work together to correct that impression. I don't know, it just hurts my heart. It hurts my heart because I know from talking to people who work with the immigrant community that, and that was also reported, by the way, in the excellent reportage in the pilot, by the way, that was also mentioned that there's fear. And who wants to live in a community where community members are fearful of venturing out, that if they have an interaction with local law enforcement, that it's going to result in them maybe not even returning to the community, because we don't even know what happened. Those people, we never got identities for them, so who knows? They're disappeared. And Whitefish PD is like at the first point in the process. And I just would like it sometimes to just be handled differently, that's all. And I guess maybe the chief is out of town or something. I'm going to reach out to the deputy. I'll call tomorrow and maybe follow up, because I have an idea of a program that maybe we can get going that they have in other communities, where it's, working with the community, even if it's like a ride-along program. I don't even know if you have one, but if you do, to step it up. If you don't, let's get it going so people can see, from the officer's perspective, maybe. I don't know. I'm just very sad today. That's all, because of the whole response afterwards and all that. And I just know we can just all be better. We can be better. This is a beautiful, beautiful city, and so many beautiful things happening. And because I'm very visible, people do approach me and ask me. And I would love to be able to say, we've had some challenges, but we're working together to make it better. So thank you for that, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Z.
There you go. Okay.
Further public comment this evening? Alberto?
Good evening. Nice to see you again. Alberto Vellner, developing Alpine 93 intersection of the 90 highway and 40 highway. Briefly to speak here on the communication from the city attorney, which I believe is not open for public comment. So I just wanted to give you kind of an update of the project and the reason why I'm here to speak briefly on it. As you know, we entered into development agreement with the city back in November of 2023. One of the requirements of the development agreement was to provide 10% deed restricted units that were, according to the Whitefish Legacy Homes program. We're completely supportive of that. I do want to indicate that the development agreement at the point, does not specify when those deed restrictions were to be signed and recorded. Now to go to the project and give you a little bit of why it's important for us today, and I'm speaking here, is because, as you know, we've started the construction of it. We are in the process of doing all of the site improvements to the 100% of the site improvements to the property. We've actually pulled and obtained all of the public improvement permits, all of the MDT permits, all of the DEQ permits. Our only permits that are outstanding are the building permits. We have gone through plan check. All the clearances have been obtained, and they are ready to be pulled at this point. The only item that we have not been able to finalize are the recording of the deed restrictions. Recently, I asked the city attorney to provide us a draft of the deed restrictions, and they were provided to me for us to review, revise, redline, and get back to the city. We gave those back to the city gave them back to us, and I think in a very collaborative effort, we worked together to come to a conclusion on those. One of the things that came up in those conversations was the Whitefish Housing Authority will still be administered, due to its recent history and even some communication that I believe, or I understood to believe, that has taken place. I don't know that the city was certain if they would still be administering it. So, we proceeded to, I think, finalize our, draft of the deed restrictions with the city. And, obviously we removed the Whitefish Housing Authority, but we are happy to include him if that's what the city wants. Ultimately, at the end of the day, our agreement is with the city and that development agreement. And at this point, all we're asking is for either the draft that has been circulated to be approved, or if it's not approved, we're perfectly fine, working with whoever you want us to work. If it's the Whitefish Housing Authority, we're perfectly fine working with them. If it's Whitefish Housing, we're perfectly fine working with them. Whoever it is, we're fine. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to abide by what you tell us to abide by. I think what we're asking is if you don't approve the draft today, give some direction to city staff as to how, these future deed restrictions, not just for us, but for other projects, should be implemented. And make it subject to getting a TCO or a certificate of occupancy so that our project doesn't come to a halt, to a stop, because we're on the verge of starting, excavations for foundations for for the first of the buildings. And we're prepared to pull our permits, but we obviously can't, the city has, in the permit process, indicated to us that we needed to get these deed restrictions recorded in order to pull the permit. And obviously, without this agreement in place, they cannot be recorded. So obviously, I'm happy to answer questions or comments once it gets brought up, but I know that it's not up to public comment, so that's why I thought I would provide this input.
Thanks, Alberto. If we have any questions when this does arise on our agenda, we'll certainly call you back up. Riss.
On a very similar note, my name is Riss Getz. I'm the acting director of Whitefish Housing Authority. We were actually really surprised to see that there was a recommendation that we were to be removed from the administrative process. I had sent an email a couple days before about getting together about, and there have been a lot of communications as we've been trying to figure out our future and make sense of Whitefish Housing Authority now that we have a new board. And we've been working on a lot of strategy. We have sort of sent the initial communications about hoping to carry on the administration of the rental portion of the Legacy Homes program while passing along the administration of the home ownership program to Kim Morisaki at the Land Trust. And so we're kind of in the beginnings of this big partnership strategy, working with Housing Whitefish, working with the city, and really coming together to make sure that we have a solid administrative plan for our federal programs that we run, for our local programs that we administer. And so I know that you received my comment via email. My request would be that in whatever way we can make sure that Alberto can move forward with this, because I know as a developer it's important to be able to move forward on it. Whitefish Housing Authority would still really like to be a part of the administrative process on this. I think we're open to a lot of different ways depending on some of the specific reasoning for why this might shift. The biggest reason is as an organization that deals directly with clients, with people who are looking for low-income housing, one of the biggest barriers to people finding housing, or even just a really morale killer in the search, I suppose, is how fragmented our affordable housing system is. You have federal subsidies for different apartment units that are owned by different developers that we don't control, but sometimes people think we control. We have the rental assistance program through Housing Whitefish. We have our vouchers, we have our units, we have vouchers in a LIHTC building, and is really confusing for our clients. And we spend a lot of time navigating them. A big part of our strategy moving forward is to develop a client navigator position, essentially a local housing social worker who can work with as universal of an initial application as possible, and then send our clients through the right program that fits with them. And I think removing us from this whole equation would harm that strategy and that intention to move forward. Again, we're in the beginnings of developing that strategy, so it's not like we have it ready to go tomorrow, but it's our intention, and we really feel like not further fragmenting out the administration of these programs. It will, if we can keep it more centralized by keeping some type of administrative connection with this project, we think that will really benefit anyone in Whitefish who's looking for affordable housing. Thanks.
Appreciate the comments, Riss. Further public comment this evening? Richard.
Mayor and Council, Richard Hildner, 104 Fifth Street, Whitefish. I think the speakers at the back of the room that are in the ceiling are not working. It's really hard to hear if you're in the back of the room. But anyway, just to let you know. And but I want to have a shout out to Public Works for the chip seal in my neighborhood. It looks absolutely phantasmagorical. Thank you very much, and to the rest of the crew. And also a shout out to Parks and Rec for fixing the leak and the sprinkler heads at K. Beller Park. And I'll be back. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Further communications from the public? Any volunteer board reports? Not seeing any. How about the council? Giuseppe, anything to add this evening? Okay. We'll move on to our consent agenda. You do have the July 21 meeting minutes enclosed in the packet. I would entertain a motion, please. Rebecca?
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Davis. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Those opposed, like sign. Thanks, Giuseppe, and that motion is unanimous, which brings us on to our one public hearing of the evening, item 6A, which will be ordinance 25-8. One second, because I can't read my packet. An ordinance amending ordinance numbers 18-01, 1902, 2114, 2309, which approved and subsequently amended the 95 Caro LLC preliminary plat and PUD to develop a mixed-use development on the former Idaho timber property located at 95 Caro Avenue in Whitefish, and this will be on a first reading. Dave?
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Pinch hitting for Wendy tonight. She's backpacking somewhere in Glacier Park. Lucky her.
Jealous.
So back in 2018, the original approval occurred on this project. It was a preliminary plat with the PUD overlay zone, which overlaid two different zoning districts, which is our industrial transitional zone and our residential transitional zone. It was a 22-lot subdivision originally that proposed 23 residential units along with professional offices, a hotel, restaurant, a marketplace with limited retail, some light manufacturing, artisan space, studios and galleries, some personal services and other uses. There were some live-work units, et cetera, in there on that 14-acre lot. And there was originally 29 conditions of approval that, and it allowed some deviations from setbacks, parking, building footprints, and some uses that would have otherwise required a conditional use permit, but were approved as part of the PUD. So there was an amendment about a year later to add clubs, private and semi-private recreational facilities to the list of conditionally permitted uses. In 2021, it was amended again, eliminated some of the live-work units, and then changed some of the marketplace and professional office space to additional residential units with the 74 new units as part of that. And then in 2022, the preliminary plat was rearranged a little bit as far as the lots went, but the open space, circulation, and layout was the same. 2023, there was a third amendment, reduced some setbacks, allowed for awnings and other spaces and to be closer to the common areas, and then it changed some of the lot coverage on some of the lots that wasn't addressed previously. And then in March 3rd of this year, the final plat was approved by the council, and there were still some items yet to be completed, which will be completed by the end of the year. So this particular amendment, this new amendment, they want to move the project to even more residential type development, increasing the number of residential units from a total of 97, which was previously approved, which was 84 residential units plus 13 live-work units, up to a maximum of 150 units. They would be long-term rentals or for sale product. Then the hotel will remain with the development, possibly move to another site in the other zoning. So that's part of moving some of the uses around, which a PUD allows. It allows you to blend uses across that because it becomes one project and not divided by the underlying zoning. And then they're adding an extensive recreational amenity for the residents and the hotel guests. So some of the commercial uses would still be permitted in there, but they're looking at possibly replacing them by residential uses. They want to have that flexibility. The design standards they're requesting to amend in this particular amendment. Right now, the overall building height is a 35 foot, except where the WT3 zoning is, which permits buildings to go up to 42 feet for mixed-use buildings, or when the majority of the roof pitch is 712 or steeper. And they want to apply this standard across the site so they don't have to change the designs of the buildings depending on what the underlying zoning is, which makes sense because it's a PUD and it should have all the same development requirements across the project. The other deviation, Lot 3 allow a building footprint exceeding 3,500 square feet. The WT3 zone does require a conditional use permit for any building that exceeds that size. And all the other lots have that exception, but originally that they weren't planning on a building exceeding that, but now they want the flexibility to do that. And then 2023, the lot coverage increased to 60%, but the building footprint wasn't increased for that, so it makes sense to do that. And then there was some parking reductions asked for in the overall original PUD. Since then, our parking standards have changed, and so they just basically want to use what our current existing parking standards are for the project rather than be held to what was approved previously, since our standards basically have reduced the parking requirement for like one-bedroom units or efficiency units and things like that. So the zoning deviations would be up to 150 units. Since the underlying zoning would only allow 114 units, in order to do that, they would have to deed restrict 10% of the units and be part of the Legacy Homes program to increase that up to 150 units. And so we're recommending a condition of approval that if they want to go over that 114 units, that they need to work with us to provide a housing mitigation plan and deed restrict 10% of the units. They want to have that WT3 building height standard across the entire project. And then again, that lot 3 have a building footprint over 3,500 square feet. And then that flexibility of uses. The benefits that they're providing remain the same as the previously approved applications. That includes the public trails there, building along the river, the public access to the Whitefish River, the public access to all the open space in the development, which exceeds 60% of the site. And then they're providing public parking for the Great Northern Veterans Peace Park as part of that. Looking at the standards as far as, well, we'll note that we did notice all the neighbors. We did not receive any public comment on this. We have to review this as far as the criteria for planning and developments. There aren't any aspects with environmental sensitive areas. Obviously, they worked with us previously on the setbacks required by the water quality ordinance. They removed a whole bunch of fill and other things in that on that site. They had a buffer restoration plan and things like that, but they do meet all the standards for the river trail, etc. Again, the common area is about 62% of the site. And they're preserving that. So in general, as we review the criteria for planning unit developments, it does meet all the imposition with the original conditions. All the criteria of the PUD chapter are being met or not applicable because it meets the requirements that was already under previous approval shown to provide adequate community benefit. As far as the zoning goes, it does meet all the criteria. For zone change, as you know, been previously reviewed for city standards. As far as the community benefit site or the review of that, we do feel it because of all the community benefit they are providing, it does meet that criteria. So overall, staff does recommend approval of this. It does meet all the criteria to be approved. We did recommend 2 conditions of approval, as I mentioned. I said 114 units, actually 122 is that total number without the deed restriction. So with 150 units, they must provide 10% of the units to be deed restricted for affordability, and the other condition is that all the other conditions that were approved be met. So this did go to the Community Development Board on July 17th, and after a public hearing, they did recommend unanimous approval. And I will try to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Dave. Any questions for Dave? We'll start with Rebecca.
Yeah, Dave, if they do give us is it 15 units for the affordable housing? But I think the business model is to do a 30-day rental. The owner's going to hold all the 150 units. So I don't think I've seen this where we have a deed restricted affordable unit, but it's month to month. I mean, how would that work for the community? Because we're not trying to encourage visitors to have these deed-restricted affordable units, but it sounds like their business model is to encourage visitation to all of these units, if they're only renting them 30 days at a time.
I mean, in their application, they said they were going to be long-term rentals. I mean, they may be on a 30-day, month to month, or maybe they're on long-term leases. I think that's be a question for the applicant, but they're not intended to be short-term rentals, which would not be allowed on that site other than within the hotel.
The second question I had is, and I've talked to Angie about this, we have no way of knowing if they're being used for short-term rentals once we commit to this plan, right?
Well, we do monitor all short-term rentals throughout the community. Our short-term rental specialist does that. So if there were to do short-term rentals in this project, we would probably find that out. And
even if they said that they would rent it for 30 days and someone only stayed for 2 weeks?
well, every single rental in the city has that same issue. Under state law, 30 days and more is considered a long-term rental.
Yeah, I understand that. I was just trying to figure out a way to fill that gap, but all right, thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Ben?
I just have one question. I also wanted to ask about the proposed condition 2 of the affordable housing units. I was just kind of curious how this condition came about and how the 122 was determined to be the number.
So within our PUD regulations, every zoning district has a maximum density. And so the industrial portion of it, residential is not permitted typically. But the WT3 transitional residential district, based on that, I can't remember the total number per acre, but again, this is Wendy's thing, but the total would have been 122 with maximum. And so they're wanting to go up to 150 and increasing that density. The only way to do that is with the affordable housing component where you get a density bonus with that.
So that would be consistent with the regulations if it was not under a PUD.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Further questions for Dave? Not seeing any. We did advertise for, Giuseppe, did you have any questions? Thank you. We did advertise for a public hearing on ordinance 25-8, and we'll hold that public hearing now. I know, Aaron, you're here representing the applicant, so feel free to approach the podium. Name and address, please.
Hi there. Aaron Wallace, 265 Hawks Lake Lane, Whitefish. I'm the principal architect and partner for Montana Creative, and the person handling this project as the owner's rep. So yes, thanks, Dave. I think I kind of sent an initial letter as part of our application that hopefully you guys were able to read. It kind of outlined how we got here to this point. So over the course of the last 2 years, the project has been in a stall and up for sale. There really hasn't been any sort of activity on the site. The underlying financer is becoming now the developer for the project. And as part of that process, he has different visions than what the previous developer did. So during the course of that, we kind of sat there and went through the options that they would want to try to do. And I ended up probably spending half my time texting Dave or emailing Dave and then down at his desk with him and Wendy. So in the course of this, we kind of outlined a series of things that we'd like to achieve and amend the PUD to allow flexibility for the project to move forward. Currently, it is in the final steps of the transfer of the process and is kind of hinging on what the project actually is, which is dependent on this PUD amendment. So this is kind of where we sit with things currently. But the hope and goal is to get the amendment approved, do some housekeeping stuff on the site currently this summer, and then go vertical with the construction next summer or spring. So that's kind of the time frame of things. What we saw in the course of the where things sat for 2 years is that the underlying development, where it was a mixed-use project with limited residential, just didn't have the financial wherewithal for anybody to move forward with it. You know, it sat there for 2 years, people looking at to kind of make a project out of it, and it just didn't make financial sense. So where we saw the best benefit would be to increase the residential aspect of the project up to 150 units over the course of the site, plus the 70-unit hotel on the site. And that's what we're here basically asking for. The other items related to the PUD amendment are kind of some housekeeping elements. So when we went through the course of the project over the previous amendments, Lot 3 was initially a very small lot. Over the course of things, it got adjusted in size, and we still, in looking back at through all the different adjustments, hadn't adjusted the allowed lot coverage like we had the rest of the lots. So kind of a little housekeeping element that just hadn't been addressed during the previous ones. The same sort of thing with the parking. When we go through this and we sit there dealing with trying to find things that are relative to the project, such as parking, that we're looking for stuff that was approved 7 years ago. How it translates, there's just been a reduction in the need of parking on a site like that. And so we just want to adhere to the current standards of what's required for the site. In fact, we're probably, with the proposed project we're doing, is going to have quite a bit of excess parking, in our opinion. The other piece that we're looking at is the height limitation. In basically one part of the property, we can go up to 42 feet with a 712 pitch, and the other poor half of the property, we cannot. And it just doesn't make much sense. In fact, the zoning division goes right through one of the buildings itself. So we're just trying to clarify that and keep it consistent. Just going to offer a lot of flexibility with us as we design the rest of the buildings and be more coherent and pull it all together design-wise too. So those are the big elements and pieces that we're looking for here today. I'd be happy to answer any sort of questions for the two that you guys had. So how we got to 122 is, actually the zone that we're allowed to have residential on it is about 8.71 acres. Times it by 14, you get 122. If we go up to 150, then we have to provide 14 to 15 units as affordable housing. And we have kind of two buildings on that are three-story buildings, internal garages and stuff that would anticipate having deed restricted to affordable to the Whitefish housing program. They are monthly rentals as a minimum. It's a long-term rental project. We don't anticipate, I'm not exactly sure of their financial program, but I'm sure leases are going to be as long as people want them. It's not a high turnover, trying to create a high turnover situation. We have the hotel part of that project at this point in time. So that's where the short-term stuff is. These are, hopefully people rent it and stay there for a long time. That's the whole goal, is to fill it up with people as long as they can stay there. So I want to stay there.
Any questions for Aaron? Rebecca?
Well, so you're thinking you're going to be doing the affordable units and not cash in them?
That's anticipated, yes, correct. We certainly, the way the site breaks up, that there's 14 that are easy to dedicate as physical units. That extra piece to get to the 15th might be a cash in lieu or another unit in the site. We haven't determined that as of yet.
So those units could be long-term rentals, like years. Once a local person got into that, they could stay there?
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's the anticipation. So
Okay.
it's just...
I misunderstood. I thought that this was sort of like a vacation rental place where people would come for a month and then leave, and then the next people would come for a month and leave. But what you're saying is you're going to try to also appeal to locals having long-term rentals there?
Yeah, they're rentals, and whether or not they're rented for a month for some people, I'm sure some units will be available for shorter periods of times, and then other leases will be for longer. For kind of desirability, there's, hope to have 150 and fill it up with as many as possible. What we see is that the kind of the marketplace that we're looking for is the groups that are, say, in Iron Horse or in different places like that don't want to own their own home anymore. They have several homes or something like that, especially the new tax in there, but they want to have a nice place in town that they only just have to pay rent for. And what we've seen is that those type of people are actually buying places that are more affordable down in, say, Silverwood or something like that, versus being able to stay here in town. So we want to create a great amenity project that people will be able to rent long-term or short-term, kind of depending on their needs.
Will these be furnished then?
That's to be decided. I'm sure some will be, not all, and that's fairly typical in a lot of the apartments we do.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions for Aaron? I had one, Aaron, just briefly. What type of housing products are you contemplating, and what will the price point be on those units for purchase?
Well, we don't plan any, the developer plans on holding these. So it doesn't plan on selling them at this point in time. The price points for the rentals, we really haven't determined that. You know, they're going to be market rate. So we're going to be hitting stuff in all levels of different in the spectrum in here. Certainly some of the units are going to have amazing views and big open floor plans, quite a bit of square footage. And others will be a little bit smaller and different levels of things. So, you know, they're going to hit a wide range of things,
Okay.
depending on usage.
Thank
Yep.
you. Appreciate it. Thanks,
Yep.
Aaron.
Anything else?
Scott, anything to add, or? Nope, okay. Any public comment this evening on this item? Richard?
Mayor and Council, Richard Hildner, 104 Fifth Street, Whitefish. I read through the notes of the planning board, and I read through the packet, and I'm going to offer some things for your consideration as you decide whether or not to approve this request. There, in the project scope, quote, "There could certainly be a point in the future where the property owner may want to convert residential space to an allowed commercial type use permitted by the PUD. Would this have a consequence on the affordability side of it?" I don't think that question has been answered, and I'm not sure it's been asked. So that if you take one of those affordable units, since the developer owns all of them and says, I'm going to convert this one, it just happens to be one of the affordable units, and then all of a sudden that one disappears from the affordability, the number of affordable units. So I worry about that. I'm worried about the 5-foot setbacks without consideration for fire resiliency and resistant building materials, architectural design, and landscaping. I think all of those have to be considered when you start to approve of the reduction of setbacks. I think these are part and parcel. Fire is part and parcel of all of your considerations, or should be. The access to the Whitefish River and the dock, it's a great idea that there be public access, but what does that look like? Will you be able to drive to the river to launch your paddle board or canoe or whatever it is? Or do you have to carry it some distance? Will there be parking provided for those who wish to use that public facility that will be provided as a condition of the PUD or the permit? I would suggest that you insist that the affordable units be constructed concurrent with all other construction. That is, if you build 10 units, number 10 or number 1, but one of those 10 has to be affordable if it's 10% affordability. So I think there has to be concurrency in the development of the project. Otherwise, you're not going to get any affordable housing, because then it reverts back to this idea of cash in lieu, and we know that cash in lieu seldom pays for affordable units. It just has not, excuse me, I brought the pencils. It has never penciled out in the city, and I'm going to leave these 2 pencils right up here for those who have trouble penciling. The trail extension along the river, will that include the section between Sky Park Bridge under the BNSF trestle to the edge of the property, or is that going to remain a unbuilt piece of trail that, as currently it shows, and when you walk through that area? You've already been asked the question on short-term rentals and the prohibition, how that will be enforced. I'm not sure the definition of a condo hotel, but apparently it has 5 employees and you need 5 parking places, according to what I read, unless I missed something. On page, depending upon which page how you look at the page, it says page 9 of 6, didn't make any sense, but I think that's page 276 of 311. The quote, "The developer plans on a to-be-developed, in-house, reduced rent rate for public servants and other qualified local workers, but this element will not be deed restricted." That makes no sense to me, and I'm not sure what a qualified local worker is. It's not defined anywhere in the document, and neither is what they're meaning by a public servant. Then, who applies for the 310 permit for the dock? I'm assuming that's the dock on the public access. Who will that be? And then, I think Dave clarified this, but I heard 114 units, I heard 122 units, and I didn't know which one was which when I was doing calculations on how much affordability would be required. But again, I really hope you insist on concurrence during construction, that the affordable units go hand in hand at the same time as the others. Otherwise, somebody's going to come back to you, as they have 5 times already, and say it doesn't pencil.
Thanks, Richard. Further public comment this evening? Yes, ma'am. You must be Susie? Okay, thanks.
I'm Susie with 5 Star Rentals. We've been doing business since 1994 in Whitefish in the Valley, and I thought I would just read through the packet. I mean, it sounds beautiful. It sounds like a really positive, beneficial thing to our area. I am currently in this business, so I have a little bit of light to shed on it, and that's kind of my reason for coming. The thing that I was thinking about the most today was just the overall footprint that it would have on 2nd Street, the sprawl on 7th Street in Baker. If I'm looking at 150 units and I'm thinking about how many vehicles potentially on all of those streets, it just kind of is a real thing that we're all going to have to deal with. That number to me was 600. If we're talking about single-family homes or 2-member homes or anything else, that's 1 car, 2 cars, and then you're factoring in how many times they're driving in town. So the sprawl really kind of was sitting with me. The area is beautiful. I like that. We currently do a lot of long-term unfurnished rentals. There is a need for that. So I get the original numbers. That's great. When I saw it creep up to the 150, I kind of just had my own personal pause, thinking that probably was a little bit of a large footprint and a large bite into everybody else that's doing business here. And realizing too that there's no HOA that will be demanded out of this. I know exactly how much even 97 homes requires, the caretaking of it, just being on call, having an emergency contact. 150 is a huge number. It also puts a huge weight on all the vendors in the area. So we're talking electricians, we're talking handymen, we're talking plumbers. I mean, parking. There's so many things that are just in my mind saying I would probably pause to the original number, and that's my personal thought is share. That's a lot of unfurnished rentals, and that would have a little bit of a negative impact on our personal business, and I know all the other property managers in town as well. As far as who we rent to, we actually provide renting for a lot of essential workers. That could be Dream Adaptive, Whitefish Mountain Resort, ski instructors, Conservation Corps, medical community. It's across the board. So we're also taking care of local people, and that probably would affect our business. Another interesting one for me is I love to play locally, whether it's skiing or go to the Wave or visit the river or just go to the bank. First Interstate Bank we bank at. And right now, today I try to go to the bank and I can't turn left and I have to visit 3rd Street, 4th Street. I have to get back to our office on 7th and Baker. And it's a challenge every day to try to get in banking hours, get to the bank, and just navigate in town during the day. And I know that's going to have an impact, even at the Wave. I don't know how it can handle 150 more parking spaces. So really, in clarifying that, I think I read through the packet that a pool would be added and some other amenities for its people there. But I would highly recommend putting in an Olympic weightlifting facility just to cut down on that, and even an Olympic pool so people could, I don't know, practice swimming or their high school, whatever they're doing there. So anyway, I guess that's all I wanted to say. It does sound like a lovely project, but that's just a little bit of my professional experience. So thank you.
Thanks, Susie. Further public comment? Michelle, anyone online? I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period, and I'll acknowledge Aaron. You're welcome to come up, Aaron.
Sure, I just want to kind of clarify a couple of questions that kind of came up. First off, the 120, it is 122. So what you have over there, and I can't remember the overall site, but the area that we're allowed to factor in for a residential is 8.71 acres. So if you just take that times 14, you get 122. To get to 115, you're required to, or 150, which is a desired number of overall units, you then have 14 units plus, or 15 units for the 10% approval. Those are going to be deed restricted. So when we put together our package originally, there was some, this kind of happened very quickly. That was the solution that we had come up with when we didn't know we actually, since we weren't involved in the original PUD process, the 122 number wasn't known until after we had submitted. So that's the adjustment that Wendy and I kind of talked through to sit there and say, okay, we're allowed to do 122 basically by right by the underlying zoning, but we want to do up to 150. So to do that, we need to do, 14 or 15 deed restricted or cash in lieu. We're willing to do that. You can condition it to do that and basically take out the clause, which is the program the developer had basically done previously in other projects to kind of get the affordable aspect in there without deed restricting it. But we're happy to condition it to do that. And right now, I think the plan is to actually do those units first in the overall scheme of the project. The rest of the items, kind of the 5-foot setbacks, that was all approved previously through the PUD to try to get different amendments to try to get the buildings closer to the streetscape to kind of create more of an urban type feel. Those designs might adjust a little bit. They might be held back a little bit further. There is no issue with any sort of fire ratings or safety ratings. We deal with this stuff all like we do all the time, just like in downtown, which that was part of it when the program, the original development, was trying to recreate a downtown type atmosphere. So that's why we looked at that adjustment. But we do, this building's a great example of right up against the edge of the property line. So I don't have any issues with that. Yes, the developer will have to apply for the 310 permit. The dock hasn't been fully designed at this point. It's been kind of roughed out. There will be plenty of parking on site for access down there. It's not an easy access because the road doesn't, and the slopes of the grade don't get you very close, but people will be able to get down there as close as they can. And there's public parking right adjacent to that. So I think that was the majority of the questions. And yes, the pool and the amenities and things like that are trying to help concentrate some of the stuff on site. The other aspect is that just as part of the original PUD, there is a requirement that we will have to, as the project develops, make sure that if we hit a threshold that a light is required, that we will install light on Carroll Avenue. The parking counts have gone down dramatically from the original proposal to what we're proposing now. There's just a lot less usage with residential uses versus a lot of the commercial aspects we had before, and it might be where we don't hit that threshold. But that kind of will be dependent on the final unit counts and sizes and number of bedrooms that we have to do, which have not been fully developed at this point. So, but that is already a pre-approved or required condition. There's already bonding in place for that. So if we need to do a traffic light, it's going to be in there. So,
Thanks, Aaron.
hopefully that addresses some things.
Question, Aaron? Ben has a question for you.
If you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
If I could just recap what I think you just said, which is the intention is to build the full 150 units with
Yes.
with the affordable housing units included.
Correct.
And you had said that you thought that the intent was to build the affordable units first? Or
Correct.
near the beginning. Would you be amenable if the condition stated something to that effect, that the affordable units would be constructed in the first phase, whatever that phase is?
I prefer not to, just because this is so in flux right now. It could be that the hotel developer decides to go first, or the hotel component goes for it. But, the intent, as we've talked right now, is that there's 14 units in 2 buildings on the south side of the site that we're working on first, and every indication is that those are the 14 that make a lot of sense for those deeded restricted units. They're great units, and that's our intent right now, to have them go forward first, but I would prefer not, because what I've seen in this project is that flexibility is key. Things adjust a little bit, and it doesn't, then we're back here asking again. So I know that if we go up, and again, when we look at it, we're basically saying is that, if you look at the underlying zoning, we could do 122. I think I can get 150 units on there in the site, but we haven't fully flushed that out. That's why we want kind of that flexibility in there. Once we pass that threshold, then we, just like any other program, you'd have to go in to get more of them. You'd go into the deed-restricted units.
So are all those units, those are not all in one building, correct? Those could be in separate lots and separate projects, essentially?
They could be.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the intent right now. So,
But how do we, the concern that was raised earlier, which I think is a fair concern, is that the affordable housing units would simply be punted all the way to the end and may or may not ever get built. How would we mitigate that concern?
well, I think you have to be realistic in that right now we basically by right you could do 122 units, right? And so anytime if we did 123 unit, or that 23rd unit, that would have to be deed restricted. You'd have to have deed restriction or cash in lieu up to that. So because of where currently the project sits, I couldn't sit there and guarantee you right now that we're going to build 95 units, 123 units, 150 units, and what I've seen with this developer as they get to kind of versed in town, they may determine that they want to have 120 units and X amount of square footage of commercial space. That's in the underlying zoning. That's the kind of thing where we're at right now. So what we want to do is make sure that we hit what we're able to do by right. If we exceed that, just like any other program, we have to deed restrict it. But it could be that one of the lots where we had planned a restaurant, the developer wants again put in a restaurant, and that what I want to say is that there's 150 units and commercial space, and I can't do 150 plus commercial space. I can do 120 units plus some commercial space, right? So there's that balancing act. And we're just so early in this game of kind of redeveloping and re-understanding the site, what the program is, that to sit there and say we have to do a certain number of affordable housing units at this point in phase 1 would just be premature, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Giuseppe, any questions for Aaron?
No question, but if you want a motion after we're done with the questions, I can offer that.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Thanks, Aaron. We have closed the public hearing, so I would entertain a motion to initiate our discussions.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve WPUD 25-01, the findings of fact in the staff report. A fourth planned unit development amendment to increase the total number of units up to 150. Apply the WT3 building height across the site, permit lot 3 to have a building footprint greater than 3,500 square feet, and allow flexibility of uses across the site, subject to 2 conditions of approval as recommended by the Whitefish Community Development Board on July 17, 2025.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Fury. Giuseppe, would you like to address your motion?
Yes, I'd love to. This is another one of those long stories. The Whitefish, what is it called? Caro 95. Now it's called Caro Yards. What we're seeing, and this is in my humble opinion, is the laws of market at play. What this nth developer is telling us is that they hope if I read through their numbers, to make the site pan out. We've been using panning a lot here, with 122 units, the hotel and commercial. At the same time, they're saying it might not work out that way. We might need to go up to 136 market price units, which is 122 plus 14. But because of our rules, to get up to that density, they need to add 15 units to bring the total to 150. And actually, I heard Aaron say most probably it's going to be 14 permanently needed affordable units, and one would be replaced by cash in lieu. So what this developer, who is talking about a development that is going to last 2 years, if it's fast, till the end of it, is looking into the crystal ball and says, I could make it work maybe at 122. I do not know what the economy is going to do in the next 2 years. So I better put the framework in place and get a pre-approval in a way that I could go up to 136 market price unit plus 14 plus one replaced by cash in lieu. I believe that if someone is taking the challenge to provide this, and I understand the concerns about people who are in the market of rentals, and that's exactly what happens. If I increase the number of rentals available, even the ones that are not permanently deeded, we'll have a competitive situation where maybe supply and demand will cause the price to drop a little bit. So I see that argument, and hence I'm in support of this development. Hopefully we get to see something going up there.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Further comments from the council? Rebecca?
It's just, I'm not used to having a project come to us where you can wiggle around. I know it's a PUD, but it seems like we're actually agreeing to these conditions, and now what Aaron's telling us is that they might not do these conditions, and so I'm just wondering, if you don't do the conditions, do you come back in with another amendment, or does the flexibility allow you to work with our planning department without coming before council again? Dave, do you mind answering that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we had a little bit of consternation because of after it was submitted with the 150 units, we're like, the only way you can do that is if you become part of the Legacy Homes program, which, by the way, has administrative procedures and standards that would require the units to be built as, an equal number with the phases. It does require them to be scattered throughout the development, not all in one building and things like that. But because it was, they're on some timeline with the new owners, and we just basically said, well, we don't really like the fact that you don't have it all laid out of how it's going to develop and what you're going to develop, but you certainly can ask, the Community Development Board and the council for that flexibility, and the Community Development Board, approved it with that flexibility built in. You guys can certainly add additional conditions if you want to, but, I do understand their consternation with not wanting to have to keep coming back over and over and over to the council for more PUD amendments. We've already done 4. So, I'm okay with that flexibility. That's why we had that condition that if you guys want to go more, then you will have to follow all the Legacy Homes requirements and deed restrict those units or pay cash in lieu. Because that way we get affordable units, but they don't have to do that if they don't go over that number of units. So I guess we were okay with that as staff, but certainly you guys are the decision makers, so you have to make that determination.
I just always thought that these were kind of like contractual arrangements between a developer and the city, and they were legally binding to what we agreed to according to the conditions. But
the
anyway.
conditions are binding, but it's a zoning overlay, so there's flexibility in the zoning as long as you meet these standards, these setbacks, this lot coverage, this number of units.
Okay,
so
if you're comfortable. The other question I had is if it's coming in under the Legacy program, then they would be working with the Whitefish Housing Authority to manage those deed-restricted units, is that correct?
I mean, that's typically the way it's done. We have, again, administrative procedures in there, which they would have to provide us with a housing mitigation plan, show where the units are, what size the units are, where they're at on the site, all as part, once they, decide that they're gonna do legacy homes, and that we have some requirements, they have to follow all that stuff. And then, obviously, get the deed restrictions and up front.
Okay, thank you.
Andy?
I think kind of to answer your question, Ben, I think the condition that staff put on them pretty much does it, because it says we are reducing the number of units to no more than 122. It says that right in the condition. And then it also says 150 units may be permitted, providing 10% of those units are deed restricted for affordability, or a fee in lieu of affordable housing is paid per the Legacy Homes program, and a housing mitigation plan is approved. So essentially, the condition states that. I mean, when Aaron said, oh, well, we've built 122, if we build 123, then we have to build those units affordable. That makes Richard nervous because he thinks then they're never going to get done. So I guess one of the things we could do with that condition 2 would be to simply amend that and say, should the Legacy Homes program housing mitigation plan be invoked and 10% of the units be deed restricted, those units would be built in concurrency with the first phases of residential construction. Because then if you do it with residential construction, it addresses their concerns if somebody wants to do the hotel first or something. So you just say it with the first phase of residential construction. If they do it. Does that work? That's what we're going to do, so I hope it does. So. And then just with regard to the questions about traffic, I think that,
Andy, one second. Let's just take that as a friendly
Okay.
amendment to condition number 2. Is there a second to that friendly amendment? Seconded by Councilor Norton. Let's vote on the amendment. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that amends condition number 2. Andy?
And then with regard to traffic, I think that
Giuseppe, I didn't record your vote.
I actually was against it because I think it's redundant, but it's not a big deal either way. It passed anyhow.
It passes on a 3-1 vote with Councilor Caltabiano voting in opposition. Andy, apologies.
And then I guess with regard to traffic, I mean, traffic was dealt with pretty extensively with the original PUD. And quite frankly, going to residential units will probably reduce the amount of traffic we would have seen with all of the commercial that we had.
It goes from 4,000 trips per day to 1,500.
Yeah, it just goes down significantly. So I think that, traffic is certainly not a concern. River access has always pretty much been in the same spot, and we certainly have other places on the river that you have to carry your stuff to. So being able to drive up and drop your boat off, I don't think is a make or break deal here for something. And I think we do need to realize we're looking at 2 changes of conditions over a very long processed project that already actually has a final plat approved for all of those other things that we've talked about. So anyway, I'll be voting in favor of the motion.
Additional comments? All those in favor of the motion as amended, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Scott. We will move on to item 7 on our agenda, which is consideration to amend the affordable renting housing deed restriction for the Alpine 93 and 40 project, and this is on page 279 of your packet. Angie.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So to take you guys down a walk down memory lane, back in January 2019, we approved the Whitefish Legacy Homes program in an attempt to address our affordable housing crisis. Basically, how the program worked was that it mandated that developers provide a certain amount of affordable units when they had to get a discretionary approval, and it provided incentives for doing so. In 2021, the Montana legislature passed House Bill 259, which basically decimated our Legacy Homes program. We then made it a voluntary program. So during the creation of our Legacy Homes program, we developed a kind of form deed restrictions for both ownership units and for rental units. At that point, we'd intended to partner with Whitefish Housing Authority on those deed restrictions. They were a party to those deed restrictions. I think at that point in time, we didn't really know what we were doing, and we didn't really have a housing coordinator, so that was how that partnership developed. The rental deed restrictions required the housing authority to income qualify tenants, and the developer property management agency was actually responsible for checking their creditworthiness, doing background checks. So there was kind of like a dual approval for tenants. And the Whitefish Housing Authority received an administrative fee for the yearly income recertification. So every year they would recertify the tenant's income to make sure that they were falling within certain levels. Back 2 years ago, we received a petition to annex, it's almost 12 acres of property located at the intersection of Highway 93 South and Highway 40. As part of that annexation process, we negotiated a development agreement, and that development agreement provided that out of the 210 rental dwelling units, 21 would be deed restricted, according to the requirements of the Legacy Homes program and the administrative procedures. It was approved by the city in November of 2023. So a few weeks ago, Alberto approached me regarding the possibility of tailoring the rental deed restrictions to his project. And we went back and forth with a couple different drafts. You'll see the red lines. Wendy and Tammy looked at this as well. Specifically, he wanted to take over the WH's role of income qualifying tenants. So the income qualification and the other qualification would be done by one entity. And so the city would actually have a role in this. It would be a very small role. The city would basically look at the income qualification, have about 5 days, and they would just use the information provided by the developer. So city staff wouldn't have a responsibility of calling the bank, making sure people's credit was good. We would just kind of have a little bit high-level oversight over the income qualification. The other significant change, I guess, that I had requested, was that the rental rates are not inclusive of utilities. I will point out to you that the Legacy Homes Administrative Procedures specifically contains those requirements, and we're making sure that that these units are meeting the 30% that we, I guess, consider affordable. There's really no financial requirements at this point for the city. I am comfortable with this particular development taking over this responsibility. I think this is something that they've done, in their role as a developer in other situations. I don't know that I'd feel comfortable recommending it if it was a smaller developer or, a group that didn't really have experience doing this. I completely agree with Riss that we need to take a holistic approach. We need to meet with the housing authority, and we need to decide how we're going to handle, these deed restrictions, administer them moving forward. Unfortunately, this was kind of time sensitive. Alberto would like to get his permits. So that is why it's coming to you in this fashion and so quickly. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. But again, I agree with Riss that we definitely need to have a holistic conversation about how we're going to move forward. We just really don't have the time for it now. Really appreciate Alberto saying that, he'll work with us on whatever we want to do. I will say that if you are not ready or willing tonight to approve these changes to the deed restriction, we need to find a way moving forward. What I would suggest is the same thing that Alberto suggested, is to have these deed restrictions filed before certificate of occupancy. The reason that we do it at building permit is just because it's easy to track, right? It's easy for the builder to come in and be like, well, here's my recorded deed restrictions, and we can sign off on the building permit. Doing it as CAO makes it a little bit more difficult, but I think we can work together to do that. So again, happy to answer any questions you might have.
May I?
And then Ben, and then Giuseppe.
Was the Whitefish Housing Authority left out of this discussion?
It was a quick discussion. I probably should have ran it by them, but we needed to get this done, so we're not holding up a project. And again, this is not something I'd normally recommend for a developer that didn't have experience doing this.
I just think we already have a process in place through the Whitefish Housing Authority, and so I'm just wondering what is not working with that process currently that this could be done through them.
I don't know that anything is not working. I don't know that we've seen, I mean, I myself have not seen how this program is working with the Whitefish Housing Authority. I will say that we met with the former executive director, or before Rissa's time, about some deed restrictions in Trailview, and on a personal level, I didn't think that they were being administered in the way that we intended them to be administered. But again, that's no reflection on risk far, way before her time. But I don't think that there's a problem. I just think it was Alberto's request, and again, had to bring it forward to you guys.
Thanks, Rebecca. Ben?
May I ask a question of Executive Director Getz, if you'd be so willing? Are you currently administering the affordable housing units for other projects in the Legacy Homes program?
We are. There are 11.
Okay. Are you having any issues with the process that is how it is structured today? Are you able to fulfill your obligations with respect to the management of those units?
I believe so, yes.
And do you anticipate any issues doing that going forward?
I don't think so, and I'm happy to even think through different ways if we have more conversations with the property managers in those places, if we have more conversations with Alberto. I think there's certainly room to iterate on this first round of rules and administrative procedures, and I think now would probably be a good time to revisit this, especially now that we'll be more than doubling the amount of units and with even more coming online. So I think there is certainly room to improve, to make sure that we have everyone in the room while we're making those decisions. But I think we're really well suited to continue the income qualifications, the wait lists, kind of making sure that we're working with the right people to get our friends and neighbors who need affordable housing into those units.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Riss, one additional follow-up, please.
So the way I understand it is there's criteria, federal criteria when you're qualifying people.
This is not federal, it's just a local program, so
Okay.
it's easier to administer actually than federal programs. Yeah.
And, okay, so someone privately could do it then, there's no, okay. What is the administrative fee that your agency gets then for managing this?
We actually have two different contracts with groups, and I'm not remembering the specific names of the units, but there's one where we specifically recruit and place people in those units. So where we run the wait list, that's I think a 3% administrative fee, and then with a different unit, it's all we do is income qualify them. Like they send us the people, they recruit people for their units, and it's only a 1% administrative fee. So they're like I said, there are different ways of doing it, and we're really open to that. To so many different ways of doing that. We just don't want to be completely shut out of the administration of this moving forward.
Okay, and do you have things that would preclude you from getting this done in the next 2 weeks?
No, we'd be happy to jump on this to make sure that it works for him. And I have no problem with tentative approval tonight, pending some type of discussion later. I think if Angie can think of a way to make that happen with them, I feel pretty strongly that we'll be able to work it out. And I honor the urgency for getting these approved.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn to Giuseppe first, Ben.
Yes,
and then back to you.
thank you. Actually, I think I'm a little confused because if I interpret it correctly, and I guess I'm asking Angie and maybe Dana, the issue about managing this particular lot of dwellings is not necessarily that the developer wants to manage them. Am I correct in understanding that it's because of a matter of timing? Meaning they don't really care who ends up managing them or administering them, as long as they are not delayed in the project development itself. Angie, am I understanding correctly?
I actually think that's maybe an Alberto question.
Okay, then Mr. Alberto, could he come to the podium, please?
Yeah, Giuseppe, that's pretty much correct. We don't really
Okay,
care.
then,
We don't care what the minister says.
may I ask you then, have you proceeded in applying for the deed restriction in a matter that the time would allow for that to be recorded without you encountering further delays, or the process has been longer than you thought, hence now you feel like against the time frame?
Well, I think, again, I was given a draft, asked to redline it. We redlined it. We came back and forth a few times with the city. When you're given something to redline, you comment on it, what we thought would be an ideal situation for us. We thought we had an understanding, and then in the last couple of days, we were told it was an issue. And now, of course, it's an issue for us because we do have a project that is quickly moving. We have literally, if we don't get some sort of direction from you guys to pull our permits, we are going to be stopped on our tracks starting next week when it comes to building buildings. We have a pretty massive project that it's coming to a halt if we can't pull our permits. I don't have a problem sitting down and talking to the city, to Whitefish Housing Authority to come to an agreement, because we will come to an agreement, but it's not going to happen overnight if that's what you guys desire, because they haven't had an opportunity to do that.
Understood. Thank you, Alberto. Appreciate it. And so, a question for Angie. Angie, the redlining process, was it going between Alberto, the city, and then to Whitefish Housing, or we, the city, were interpreting the redlining on behalf of the Whitefish Housing Authority?
I don't know that we're interpreting it on behalf of the Whitefish Housing Authority. I mean, the deed restrictions are city deed restrictions, and they were a condition of city approval. So that was between the city and Alberta.
So it doesn't really matter if the deeds are managed, the applications are managed by Alberta of the Whitefish Housing Authority. The delay that is perceived by the developer is in this interaction to get the agreements frozen and agreed upon, right? I mean, even if tonight we said Alberta will manage the applications, that wouldn't change unless we sign the agreement as it is at this point. Am I correct? I'm trying to understand where the bottleneck lies.
I mean, I think the bottom line is, yeah, we started working on these deed restrictions a couple of weeks ago. And I think that there's a way to move forward if everybody wants to sit down with the housing authority, and Alberto's, indicated he's fine with that. Riss has indicated she's fine with that. I'm fine with that too. What I don't want to do is, have government work as government does sometimes and have these deed restrictions, languish for 6 months and hold up his project. But again, I think that maybe the way that we get around that, if everybody wants to sit down and talk about a way for the housing authority to manage these deed restrictions, is simply to allow the permits to issue, and we can have the deed restrictions recorded before C of O.
Thank you, Angie. Mr. Mayor, I have some ideas, but I will make them after we have a motion, because right now it's question time.
One more comment from Ben, and then I would entertain a motion,
I have one question also.
Okay, Andy? Ben?
Angie, well, my first question is, there's other projects under construction that are part of the Legacy Homes program right now. For example, the one between Texas and Colorado. Have they already done deed restrictions that are of the standard form, I guess?
I think those were the standard form, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then my second question is if, I think it's, in my opinion, perfectly reasonable to execute a deed restriction prior to C of O, but how was the council to do that? Is that a regulation we can change?
No, it's not a regulation we need to change, because the development agreement actually cover when the deed restrictions needed to be recorded, nor does the Legacy Homes program. sorry. So nor the development agreement doesn't say they have to be recorded a building permit, nor does the Legacy Homes program. That is just how we have managed it before because, again, they come in with recorded deed restrictions, we sign off on a builder permit. C of O, you know, might be a little bit more challenging for staff to manage, but I'm not saying it can't be done.
Okay, thank you.
Andy?
Quick question for Riss, and you don't have to come up. Are we going to manage through the Housing Authority the deed restricted units at the Ruiz project?
As far as I know, I haven't heard anything different.
Do we know?
That is the case, I believe.
They
They
already-
didn't
they already
request
passed.
anything but the normal, I guess, form deed restriction, I'll say.
All right, sounds good. Well, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Please.
I would go ahead and move that we allow Alberto to apply for his building permits, and the building department can have the authority to issue those with the deed restrictions applied at certificate of occupancy as opposed to prior to building permits, as is our usual case, and I'll speak to that if I get a second.
Is there a second to the
I'll
motion?
second it. I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilor Caltabiano. Andy?
Seems to me that's a pretty good workaround. What we've seen is a pretty constant fragmentation of housing effort in this community between groups and everybody else, and now that I hear that we are going to be doing the Ruiz project, this is a very similar kind of project, and I think Riss makes a very good point that through their efforts to streamline that process, to having one central go-to site, quite frankly, will be better for the properties, and will certainly be better for all the applicants, and we can make that work out, which means you are all going to have to talk a little bit, but I think that's the best process. You get to move forward, we get to hopefully make a process easier for applicants, and there you go. So.
Ben?
Yeah, I'll comment too. I mean, when this is the Legacy Homes program. It's a program, and it was created a couple years ago. It took years to draft, and it's structured in a certain way. And I think it's very hard to make substantial changes in the program on the fly like this. I think that sort of goes against the purpose of it, which is to lay out how this program is going to work so the developers are clear, they know what to expect, and the nonprofit partners will know what to do. And so I think if there's better changes to be made, I think folks would certainly be all ears about it, but I think very much the point of doing all of that was to avoid this kind of situation where we're at the 11th hour, poor guy's trying to get his building permits, and you know, we're discussing substantial changes to the Legacy Homes program. So I do not think this is the right way to do this. Personally, I'm still kind of wondering why we don't just use our form one that we already have, because that's what the other projects are doing, and that's kind of how the program is intended to operate. But if that's not acceptable, I honestly think that just simply doing this later before CFO, there's no problems with that. So I'll support your motion, and you know, I think Executive Director Getz, obviously we've got a lot more units coming, and I think that probably is a ripe time to revisit you know, the Housing Authority's capabilities and making sure that everybody is prepared. Because the last thing I'll leave that at to Mr. Vellner, you know, in this regard, I do believe the interests of you and the community are very much aligned, that we want this to work and we want the units to be filled. So if there's a problem that is preventing that from happening, I'll be the first one to say, you know, please come talk to us and let's figure out what to do, because we're all working towards the same goal in that respect. So anyway, I'll support the motion, and I'm sure the rest of it will work itself out over time. Thanks.
All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those
Aye.
opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Alberto. Thanks, Riss. We'll move on to item 8. You have Dana's report and close with the packet. Any questions for Dana on her written report? Not seeing any. Dana, anything additional to report on?
I just wanted to report on the Resort Tax Monitoring Committee met last week, and I got to attend on Laney's behalf, so it was great to see them. One of the concerns that came up during that meeting from one of the committee members was, and Giuseppe, this might be in your wheelhouse, Glacier International Airport's plan to close down the runway for construction in July of 2026. It was reported, at least to the Flat Beacon, that the runways would be closed, air traffic would be closed from Monday through, I think, Friday morning every week for 4 consecutive weeks in July, which is our
May I help
busiest
you
time.
there?
The reason I bring it up is council might have interest in this, and Giuseppe, you might be able to inform the public more about it.
If you're interested, I exchange hats, and I wear the one of Commissioner of Glacier Park International Airport. The runway needs to be resurfaced per FAA regulation. It was last done 9 or 14 years ago, and it requires taking out 4 inches worth of tar and putting back 4 inches worth of tar. It's a almost 10,000 feet long runway, and the requirements by FAA dictate that the work be done when within 24 hours the temperature never drops below 50 degrees Fahrenheit and there is no significant amount of rain. And the process would take either 4 solid weeks closing the runway. The airport has 2 runways, but the ones that the airlines use are the one we're talking about. So closing the main runway would mean close the airport to airline traffic. Or we, the airport, found a developer and negotiated with them that they could work from July 7th to July 31st. Every week, we will close the runway Monday at 6 p.m. and open it again Friday at noon. So the runway and the airport will function every weekend from Friday at noon till the Monday after at 6 p.m. We thought this was a reasonable trade-off. We gave the airlines 1 year notice. As a comparison, Missoula has given the airlines 6 months maybe notice because they're doing something similar but different. Once this is all done, we will need to groove the runway, which means cut transversal grooves so that the aeroplanes are landing, if it's rained, do not hydroplane, do not skid, so to speak. That will be done in September, will be done at night, so it will not require to close the runway. We have received letter from Chamber of Commerce of Kalispell, Arrow, and different organizations. The board doesn't get into the weeds. At the same time, this might be one of my public comments. I would say, I think it's a good plan, and if we did it in June or in September or in a month when for a number of those days that are planned to work on, it rained or the temperature became lower than 50, those days will have to be tacked at the end of the project, causing now an issue because we wouldn't have noticed the airlines, we wouldn't have noticed the hotels, and then it becomes a little bit more complex to manage the economy. So that's where we are.
Thanks, Giuseppe. So the concern that's raised, at least by the members of the Resort Tax Committee and other businesses, is that July is our heaviest travel. And Giuseppe, get ready for a fun board meeting. I would say you have a lot of people ready to show up at the airport for your next board meeting. Under the Big Sky, for example, is that one weekend in July, third weekend in July, with how many people fly in. I know that there's concerns about that impact to tourism here in our community, and it could impact resort tax dollars in July, is my guess. If they can't fly in, fly out, not everybody will drive. So if council wants to do anything, write a letter or anything, let me know, but it's just something I wanted you to be aware of because our community members are talking about it. But that's all I have.
Thanks, Dana. I'm inclined not to write a letter, given Giuseppe's thorough analysis of the different options. We can always pave the Whitefish airstrip and redirect the flights into Whitefish.
Great idea, Mr. Mayor.
No, let's call Bob Horn.
Thanks very much, Dana, for the report. We'll move on to communications from myself as well as the city council. Andy, would you like to start this evening?
Yeah, top of my list, and this is for you, Kevin. Throttle bikes on sidewalks downtown. It's like the emergence of cicadas this summer, and this last couple weeks has been, there are underage drivers on throttle bikes going 30 miles an hour on sidewalks, and I was making a right onto Railway westbound off the viaduct the other day, and 3 kids, full speed up the hill right in front of me, and I don't know how we deal with that, but somebody's gonna get seriously hurt. Either a pedestrian or one of the kids are gonna get run over. I don't know what, it's literally this last 2 weeks, just brutal.
Yeah, we've had a lot of close calls lately. And, you know, speaking with Bridger, and Angie, you might better be able to answer this, but I believe he's in the process of drafting an ordinance. Can you hear me?
Microphone, Kevin,
Can you hear me?
please.
How's that?
Thanks, Kevin.
Sorry about that. No?
They knew better, they shut ours off.
Either one of these are working.
Test, test.
Hello.
Scoot on
How's that? Can you hear me? Okay. No, we've had a lot of close calls this summer, and I know, speaking with Bridger, I believe he's in a process of drafting an ordinance for reference these because of what you're talking about. So this isn't the first time I'm hearing it.
It's coming to the next work.
Yeah, the next work session. Okay.
Good, because we need to do something. It's, other than that, that's all I have.
Thanks, Andy. Rebecca?
Kevin, while you're there, is there anything you want to address for Bonnie's comments? I'm trying to keep an open dialogue going between the police and our community, since it's kind of developing a lot of angst for people. Is there anything that you could add to what she was saying?
No, you know, I appreciate her comments about the protest the other day, and I very much appreciate it. But that said, I know she wants to speak with Bridger in the morning, so I'm going to let her do that.
Thank you. Don't have anything else. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Ben?
I just wanted to point out one thing, well, two things that are related. One is that I saw an article yesterday that there is a $58 million sewer facility proposed in Lakeside, which single-handedly is expected to add $30 per month to all of the utility bills of the residents of Lakeside. And the second thing I would point out is we have a $19 million water storage project that is only 15%, which seems very strongly related to the growth of the town, of which only 15% is actually funded by impact fees. So I know that this council often gets criticized at times for impact fees, it seems like, but I just wanted to use those examples to reiterate the fact that they have a very important social purpose for everybody and making sure that the residents are not bearing excessive cost due to growth that they did not create. And so I hope we continue to keep that in mind as we move forward. Yeah, and that's all I had. So thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Giuseppe?
Yes, thank you. There are two comments. Since Councilor Norton mentioned it, I took the time to do a little analysis of all the people who came to see us, as well as on a couple of very popular social media sites. And I've realized that all the people who talk about fear of the Whitefish Police Department are not residents within city limits. So I just put this out as a data point, because all these protesters keep talking about our community, which we are very including community. At the same time, all the comments that are in support of the work that the Whitefish Police Department has done, including asking for a driving license within a group of people in a car so they could drive it away safely and legally, they are all Whitefish local residents. I was not going to say it, but I had to say that now. Now, my comment that I had prepared was actually for Bridger/Kevin, which regards House Bill 588, which is that bill signed into law in May 2025 and will become enforceable effective October 1st, which has to do with legalizing all those electric moving devices without a seat to go around on roads. I simplify, like electric scooters, electric unicycles, motorized skateboards. And now this adds up to the concerns that Councillor Fury just raised. And since you guys mentioned that we're going to have a work session on enforcement of motorized vehicles around town, I might suggest to Kevin, to pass on to Bridger, maybe you guys are already doing it, to look at this bill, because October 1st, with a maximum speed of 30 miles per hour, all these vehicles will be legally running around on the roads, no helmet required, they have to have headlights, but no endorsement and no license. So they could be adding themselves to the sidewalk traffic that Andy already expressed concern about. Thank you.
Thanks, Giuseppe. I'll close the meeting out. We have 2 items that we still need to address from our work session, just so Dana can finalize the budget in Laney. Are we in consensus on not funding the snow bus? I think that was kind of our last discussion point during the work session, this year anyway. Any comments on that? Consensus?
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to a small increase, but $100,000 is not on my plate by any means. So, when I say small increase, I'm thinking like $5,000 or something, 25%, or that'd be a 30% increase, I guess.
So we currently provide 15, Dana?
Correct.
Okay.
It sort of does meet climate action goals, and there are a lot of local people that ride it, but quite frankly, I mean, that route is mostly for profit, so
Yep.
I think it, which I think we discussed before.
Okay. Is everyone comfortable with Andy's suggestion? Giuseppe?
Yeah. Yes, yes.
Thank you. And the last item is the request from the Whitefish Community Center, which was how much, Dana?
That's 40,000.
And we currently provide,
We do not provide any funding to them. The amount that we do provide, which I believe is like $1,500, is actually a reimbursement under our lease agreement with them for the outside lighting and irrigation.
okay. Any thoughts on this request? Rebecca?
I think we should fund it because there's going to be a lot of changes coming from the federal government in terms of not funding things. They've put a lot of work into presenting why they need it, and it does do Meals on Wheels. It's also a major hub for community gatherings. I think it's, they're quiet, but they do tremendous amounts of work for the community. So, but, you know, I know it's a rough year too.
Ben?
I do appreciate the good work happening over at the Whitefish Community Center. I mean, I'm cognizant of the fact that we do not currently fund them at all, and they've got some good folks over there trying to raise money. And, you know, I also am very aware that this is a request in perpetuity, which perpetuity is a long time. And so I think for me, I would like to support them. My preferred dollar amount for this year might be a little lower than what they have here. I was going to say maybe something like 15 or 20, and then, you know, ask them to come back and we can reevaluate in the future based on their needs and how they're expanding and what they need to do. And that's just my opinion, but I don't want to say that in a way that sounds like I'm not appreciative of everything that's happening over there. But forever's a long time, so why don't we take it a step at a time? That's my thought.
Other thoughts?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The way I look at it is if I went around door by door and said, would you pitch in $2 a month, $3, whatever the meals are in the end, to fund the Whitefish Community Center, how would these residents feel? And I think the best, in my personal opinion, what Ben described is the best interpretation. Probably my heart says, let's fund them. My fiscal frugality says, well, it's not my money. It's the money of the taxpayers I'm deciding upon. So probably, not probably, certainly, I really support what Ben expressed. So fund them not to that high tenor at this point of time, because it would be, unless we do it once and not in perpetuity, I feel very comfortable with the $20,000 to $40,000 amount
Per year.
per year.
Any thoughts, Andy?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, and I think for one of these things that I'd be probably willing to support to partially offset that would be to drop the affordable housing contribution from 4 to 3.5 mils. If their dollars are going up by 100%, plus they're picking up now money out of the resort tax this coming year, I think that, and on Dana's suggestion, because that would be $50,000, say we do 25, we're picking up, about 40% of that cost out of the $0.5 mil from the housing people. So I don't know, it kind of seems to me like that's a sort of a reasonable trade-off. I don't know, but it's something for consideration.
Ben?
I think that's a good idea, Andy. I mean, I'm all for affordable housing, obviously, but my long-term view is that the affordable housing efforts would be funded by the resort tax in the long term, not by property mills, and seems like, and given the fact that the amounts are going way up anyway, that's coming out of this for affordable housing, I think now might be a decent time to at least start to step it back slightly as the resort tax money is growing every year. And obviously we'll reevaluate in the future, but I support what Andy's saying.
So any direction? I'm a little unclear with the direction that was provided, unless you're all in agreement with Andy's.
I'd say 15,000 this first year, I'd say, yeah.
Through a mill increase? Or just the transfer of the half percent?
Yeah, traffic.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, the housing fund still gains $52,000 additional this year. I mean, it still grows. So it's not like they're being cut back.
Dana, any comments on that? Concerns?
No, I think I understand it, that we have dropping the mills for the housing fund to 3.5, and then 15,000 annual payment to the senior center, 5,000 to BMC additional, so for a total of 20, and then 100K annually for PWK.
That's
for
correct.
Smithfields. Okay, just making sure I got it all down. No, I think that's fine. I think you could, I mean, if you're concerned, you could reduce that 3 mils to, I mean, you could even go down to 3.25 if you want to offset it because of the city pay as well. But that's definitely up to you. You can see how it goes. We have adequate revenue in there to utilize for certain projects that come up.
Can I comment for a sec?
Yes.
Just understanding the math. Andy, I'm all okay with what you said. It's just that I don't get, if we take $500,000 from one fund and move it to the senior center, that would be around $40,000. Am I correct? Or we're saying we don't take the full $500,000. We discount the affordable programs by $500,000, and out of those $40,000, more or less, that we save, we devolve only 15 to the senior center.
No, Giuseppe, with the valuations we got today, a value of a mill will be $104,000 this coming year.
Oh, it's even high. Okay.
Went up by 28.5%.
Okay. I missed that calculation, sorry. Okay. Okay.
Sounds like we have direction, Dana.
Yes.
Anything further from you or staff?
Nope, I think we're good.
I just want to thank you and Laney and all the department directors for the information that you were able to synthesize and digest in 5 hours today. It was a lot of information. Some of it went over my head, admittingly, but certainly appreciate your efforts, and I don't know how you guys do it, but it's much appreciated. On that note.
I did forget one thing. November 1st, mark your calendars.
Okay,
We're
great.
looking for a location, council retreat.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. We are adjourned.
Bye.
Is there?